Hi, how you doing? My name is Chana. Welcome to my channel. It's called Chederathome, and it's all about Jewish home education. Whether you homeschool, whether you don't homeschool, it's for everybody. The center of Jewish life is the home, and that is what my channel is all about. And I hope you subscribe. I want to share with you a story about my journey to understand that there is a God in the world that created the world and that runs the world. So I grew up very secular, and nobody taught me about God. I went to Hebrew school, but I never learned about who God was or what God was. I don't really remember really learning much, but but kids are very spiritual. Kids are naturally spiritual, and when I was a kid, even though I never learned about God, my perception of what God was or who God was in my childlike spirituality was an old man in the sky, no face, like no real body, but just this old man in the sky that would writhe in pain every time I did something wrong. I mean, to this day, I still can picture that childlike image of that in my head, but that could not be farther from the truth of who God is and what God is about. As my childhood wore off, as I got older, obviously I'm not going to keep that perception, that spirituality in my head, because that is such a negative view, and I don't want to pray to a God like that. That like hurts when you do something bad. That's only looking at you when you're bad. So I mean, I totally gave up the idea of God, and for quite some time, I definitely would proclaim that there was, no God in the world. So let's fast forward to 11th grade. I was 16, and that year I wasn't really in school for, a few reasons, which I'm not going to go into here, but I would go on hikes with one of my friends. And there's a reservation in my town, this beautiful reservation. We would, um, go on hikes in the woods, and it was very quiet and isolated, and you were just surrounded by nature, and we would have some deep conversations there. This was my oldest, dearest, bestest friend. We've been friends since, I don't know, I was like 4 years old or something. So we would go for hikes in the woods this year that I wasn't in school. We would talk, we would have deep conversations about the world and about life in general. And on one of these hikes, she told me about a concept of there is a God. She was explaining there is a God. He is a good God, and he wants the world to be good, and he's going to clean up the world one day and make it a completely good place. And that was it. That was all she told me. So when I heard that, something clicked in my head, and I looked up at the sky, and I still, to this moment, I still remember the trees with the sky through the trees and the clouds and where everything was, and I'm picturing that moment in my head right now. I looked up at the sky, and I understood that there was a God that existed in the world. I didn't know who God was. I didn't understand it. I definitely did not know that I could even talk to God or pray to God. That actually came a number of years later, was the first time I prayed and spoke to God. But in that moment, I realized that God existed. So why am I sharing this with you? Well, I was reminiscing because it's getting to be Elul, and I was thinking about my life, and I always like kind of go back in my life and see where, like, just my relationship with God and how it's developed. So that was the first time that I understood God existed. Right now we're just about in Elul, the month before Rosh Hashanah, the last month of the year, and then Rosh Hashanah is the first day of the new year. It's a pretty powerful, special day, but this month is also has its own power. And I'll explain an analogy to you, how to explain God's relationship to us this whole month. So picture a king in a palace. Okay, wait, hold on. It's an analogy. This is nothing to do with politics. Okay, so it's just to get an idea of the kind of relationship that God has with us right now. And it's like a king in a palace, a good king in a palace that rules his kingdom from his throne with his crown and his royal garb and in his palace ruling the kingdom. And then one day he wants to see how people are doing in his kingdom. So he takes off his royal, king's clothes and puts on regular like t-shirt and jeans, I guess, and comes out into the world to see how people are doing and listening and talking to people. Everybody can come to the king and tell him how life has been under his kingship. Everybody can come close to the king. Everybody can talk to the king. He's here in with us, not as a king, but like almost as our friend, like as our friend, as one of us. That's this month of Elul. God is with us, but not as a king. King is for the whole year, especially Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah is when it's like the coronation ceremony of God. But now it's just coming close, connecting, reflecting, meditating, thinking about our relationship with God. Okay, so now this is a Jewish home education channel, so how does this relate to our children? I'll share with you that my goal for this month with my children in our homeschool, in our home environment, is meaningful conversations about God. Bedtime is a great time. They ask a lot of questions. They're kind of settled in bed and they have questions. Like they're open. It's a teachable moment, bedtime. Not all the time do I have the headspace for it because sometimes it's just so late at night. But most nights, like we can sit down and have a meaningful discussion about who God is, how good God is. God is always with you no matter what. Like even if you fight with your siblings, even if made your sister cry or whatever, God is still with you. God still loves you. God always loves you. God is always with you. God is always listening. You can always talk to God. And that's the theme. That's what I want to impart to my children. And the hope is that then they'll act in such a way. They'll act as a daughter of the king, because that's really what we are. We're all children of the King of Kings, which is God. So that is what I wanted to share with you. I would love to hear what you have to say. Please comment, let me know, message me. I would love to hear what you have to say about the ideas I'm sharing with you here. Do your children ask you questions? How do you respond? Like, when do you find to be the best time to have these meaningful discussions? And yeah, I would love to hear what you have to say. So that's what I wanted to share with you. Make sure you subscribe. I got some really cool videos coming up. There's a bunch of giveaways coming up. And there's a video that my children made for you guys to see, for your kids, our kids to your kids. So make sure you subscribe, and I will see you next week. Take care. Bye-bye.